One of my favorite things about crossover games are when developers go for some real deep cut inclusions to make things interesting. I'm talking about left field choices like Link in Soul Calibur 2 or Mars People in SVC Chaos. The Capcom Versus games are full of roster picks of that nature, and in a lot of cases, have even gone on to become fan favorites like Shuma Gorath. One pick that's always stood out to me was the inclusion of Maki, one of the main playable characters of Final Fight 2 on the Super Nintendo and Capcom vs SNK 2. Maki is the sister of Reina, Guy's fiancé, and daughter of Genryusai, the 37th Bushinryu master, preceding Zeku and later Guy. The events of Final Fight 2 are kicked off when Reina and Genryusai are kidnapped by a reformed Mad Gear gang after the events of the first Final Fight game. With Cody out of the country with Jessica and Guy undergoing Bushinryu training elsewhere, Maki makes a desperate call to Mike Hagar for his assistance in rescuing them. While this doesn't come across in the English localization of Final Fight 2, Maki's a hot-headed, impulsive fighter and was a former delinquent before undergoing her Bushinryu training. Before her surprise appearance in Capcom vs SNK 2, she appeared in Sakura Ganbare, a manga series following Sakura's exploits around the time of the Street Fighter Alpha games. Die-hard Street Fighter fans may recognize that manga title. It had the first appearance of Kaden Kanzuki, Sakura's rival who would later debut in Street Fighter Alpha 3. As cool as her appearance in CVS 2 is, she wasn't actually the developer's first choice for that particular roster spot. According to an interview with the developers, the team initially planned on the roster spot going to Lin Kurosawa, one of the main playable characters of Capcom's excellent Alien vs Predator beat-em-up. However, because Lin is technically a licensed character, being owned by Fox and now Disney, they weren't able to legally secure her for the roster. Interestingly enough, they came up with the idea for Maki after, but tossed around the idea of her having a moveset inspired by Lin. But they ultimately scrapped that in favor of giving Maki her own moveset inspired by Final Fight. She, along with Relento, who also makes his Versus series debut in this game, are the first Final Fight characters to make it into the Versus games, and for a long time were the only ones, at least until Hagar made it into Marvel 3. She sports a slightly updated design compared to her appearance in Final Fight 2, the most notable addition being that dope pair of Jordan 1s. They make for a nice compliment to Guy, who infamously rocks a set of Nike Dunks in the Alpha games. Between Sakura having a pair of Chucks and Ibuki wearing a set of Air Max 95s in Street Fighter 3, Capcom really had to have some hardcore sneakerheads in their fighting game division back in the day. Maki is best described as a mix-up character in CVS 2. She has a great neutral game and can control space pretty well, but consistently dealing high damage with her requires good reads and somewhat tricky execution. Let's jump into things, shall we? Being a Bushinryu practitioner, as well as a Final Fight protagonist, Maki gets access to some specific tools that tend to get shared across other Final Fight and Final Fight adjacent characters. The first and most recognizable one is the Bushin chain, initiated by pressing Light Punch, Medium Punch, Heavy Punch, and Heavy Kick all in sequence. They first appeared in Street Fighter Alpha series as a target combo specific to Guy, and if I'm not mistaken, one of the first implementations of a target combo in fighting games. The target combo itself has even deeper mechanical roots though. It's specifically based on the 4-hit attack string from Final Fight. Naturally, Maki's is loosely based on her attack string from Final Fight 2. Maki also gets a variation of this target combo that ends with a throw instead, by pressing down in Heavy Punch in place of Heavy Kick. This one's a little tricky to time, but worth learning. This one is also a nod to a Final Fight mechanic. There, if you hold down on the joystick while doing an attack string, your character will end the string by throwing the enemy instead of simply knocking them away. Other Final Fight and Final Fight adjacent characters that have made it into fighting games have gotten variations of this target combo, like Cody, Zeku and Lucia in Street Fighter V, as well as Kimberly in Street Fighter 6. When jumping in the air, Maki can perform an elbow drop by pressing down and medium punch in the air. This is notable in that it slows her forward momentum and subsequently changes her jump arc, making it a good move to bait out certain things. This is derived from Final Fight's jump attack that can also be initiated by pressing down and attack in the air. Maki's first dedicated special move is Genko, done with a quarter circle forward and punch. This is an advancing punch whose range and power depends on the strength of the punch button pressed. Next up is Hayagake, a command run initiated with quarter circle forward and kick. A follow-up can be done depending on the button pushed. The light kick follow-up immediately halts her. The medium version is a low-hitting slide that ends with a grab. And the heavy kick version is an overhead strike that also ends with a grab. This move is more or less inspired by the technique of the same name in Guy's moveset in the Street Fighter Alpha series. Maki also gets a version of this that runs away from the opponent instead, Saka Hayagake. This version has its own follow-ups. Light kick is again an emergency stop. Medium kick is a super jump forward. And heavy kick is a super jump retreating away from the opponent. Hasokiyaku is a wall kick Maki can do by pressing quarter circle back and punch when in the corner in the air. Maki's action is once again dictated by the strength of the punch button pressed. This is based on Maki's wall kick maneuver, which is again a technique shared with Guy in her home series. Do keep in mind that this can also be initiated from her command jump out of Saka Hayagake. Tengu Daoshi is a command grab Maki can only use in the air, done with a half circle forward motion. Roppukiyaku is one of Maki's most interesting moves. It's an invincible reversal she gets by pressing all three kick buttons simultaneously. This move was Maki's special attack in Final Fight 2. Like in that game, Maki actually loses a bit of health when using it. This would go on to become something of a trend for other Final Fight characters to make it to fighting games. Hagar gets his Final Fight Lariat special in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and Cody got his Final Fight 1 spin kick in Street Fighter V, both of which carry a health penalty for using them, just like in Final Fight. Maki's first super is Bushin Goraiha, done with 2 quarter circle forwards motions and punch. This is a standard punch combo. The kick she does at the end is the same high kick she does at the end of her Final Fight 2 attack string. Tashinsho is done with 2 quarter circle forwards motions and kick. This is primarily the super you want to use with Maki, as the heavy variation does a ton of damage if all of the hits connect. Unlike her standard command run special, the strength of the follow-up attack is actually dictated by the kick button press in conjunction with the command run initiation, not the kick button pressed afterwards.
That's what we like to call big damage.
Maki's final super is Ajara Tengu, a command grab super done with a 720 motion and punch. This super can also be done in the air, but it's somewhat difficult to set up and not especially practical.
That's what we like to call big damage.
Here are all of Maki's colors. I don't know if this was the intent, but this color in particular reminds me of Poison from the Final Fight series. It's probably the hair. Maki has special intros with Todo and Yamazaki.
東道流の神髄見せてやる。
言いたいことはそんだけかい。
Live and let die. Fight!
何よ、じらじら見てんのさ。
物足りねえな。
Live and let die. Fight!
For a character who wasn't even initially going to make the game, I think the CVS2 development team did a bang-up job of translating her into a fighting game. Honestly, someone could probably produce a video essay on how beat-em-up and fighting game design principles go hand in hand and benefit both genres in some big yet somewhat subtle ways, and Maki's definitely one of the biggest examples of that. She hasn't been seen all too often after CVS2, but she's been around. She appeared as a bonus character in the impressive Game Boy Advance port of Street Fighter Alpha 3 Upper alongside CVS2 alumni Eagle and Yoon, and would return again in Street Fighter Alpha 3 Upper's final update, Street Fighter Alpha 3 Max for the PSP. Her rival battle in that game is against Sakura, a nod to the Sakura Ganbare manga mentioned earlier in the video. Past that, she's made some cameos here and there. She has a background cameo in Capcom Fighting Evolution, and is shown having attended a festival that Ryu helped out in Street Fighter 6's World Tour mode. Only time will tell if she pops back up in a fighting game again. Kimberly in Street Fighter 6 seems to capture some of Maki's Bushin Ryu spirit, but it'd be nice to see Maki's unique flair fully realized in a new fighting game. But until then, thanks for watching, subscribe if you like, and take care.